experienced divers that come through Scripps and some of our collaborators too at other institutions. He trained me back when I started like in 2013. So he's kind of the guy you want to learn from. He knows a lot. He's got a lot of experience, more than a lot of the people we have out here at Scripps. So give him your attention. He's got a lot of cool things to show you. And feel free to ask him questions. He's invite. In fact, I'd love to geek out about stuff with you. So,
Awesome. Good morning. Hi. Thanks, Mohammed.
yeah.
Yeah, Mohammed said, my name is Rich. I more or less run the day-to-day operations here at the university for the scientific diving program. And when we do our training to train our scientists to go out and do their own work, I typically lead all the training for them. So we run some classes a couple times per year. Any of you guys already scuba certified? You-ish? You've breathed underwater before, but that's about it. Cool. Most like recreational diving, you see when you learn to dive, you often might be a couple of pool sessions, but you learn to dive in basically a weekend. It's a very short class, and the goal is to get in the water as quick as possible. We have a much different approach that we want people to be really safe and also very productive getting their work done. So we run a 2-week long course, a very long course. We do 14 dives, 4 pool sessions, quite a bit. But the goal is that we take someone that's been doing their research for a long time, and they can go out and conduct their own science. The concept is it's much easier to take a scientist and turn him into a diver than turn a diver into a scientist. Because you guys are going through school now, you realize there's a lot of learning there. And then once they become a diver, this is kind of the base of the operations for all local diving. That's what I'm going to show you guys around here right now. Just backing up a moment, again, my name is Rich. I went to UC Santa Cruz where I studied marine biology. I was about to go to grad school, but took some time off from school. And I was already diving. I was working for some science projects, volunteering. And to make some more money, I became a dive instructor. I was working for the university teaching their scuba. And then when this job opened up, I luckily had all the right qualifications, but also the right time. And so I came here in 2004, which is quite a while ago. If you'd asked me back then if I'd be here this long, I'd be pretty surprised myself. But so 21 years now, yeah, this August. So yeah, I've seen quite a bit and seen people grow up through the program and stuff, because you started as an undergrad and went through your master's, and so it's been really cool to see the trajectory. But in the end, whether you guys learn from a local dive shop, we're still just basically keeping people safe underwater, and that's still really cool. We have in our program, we have about 150 divers. We're one of the largest programs for science diving in the United States. A few other schools are a little bit bigger, like UC Santa Barbara, but they train a lot of undergrads and then they immediately graduate and move on. Whereas Mohammed's a great example is that we've trained him, but he's now been here for a number of years. So we have a lot of, not only a big program, but people stay in the program for a while. And so it's great that we can see the progression, but also kind of work with them over the long term. Of those 150 divers, only a third of them do local work here in San Diego. We do all of our training here, but what's cool about Scripps is that we have global science going on. We literally train our divers. Some of them are going to the Arctic next month, so northern Norway and Finland area. Next winter we have some people going to the Antarctic, so we have to train them here, and as you can imagine, it might be really hard when it's hot out, but they have to train to go when the water is negative 4 degrees and things like that. So. No, it's not. And one of the trouble we have, especially training these people to go to the Antarctic, is we have to have them practice using the equipment they're going to wear there. So thick, dry suits, lots of thick gloves, thick hoods. And the problem we have here is we're worried about them overheating. We're down there, they're going to really appreciate it. Yeah, so great question. But the other end of the spectrum, we have a whole lot, most of our dives actually that the university conducts are in the tropics. So as you can imagine, with beautiful coral reefs and what's cool about science is like a lot of people go to Tahiti on vacation and like stay at a resort and feed you fresh fruit after your dive. A lot of our scientists go to very remote places where very few humans go. They might go on a ship that takes them 5 days to get to an island, and then they dive for 4 or 5 days and leave. So that's again why we have to make sure they're very safe and very comfortable in the water, because there's not a 911 you can call or like a dive master to help you. So they have to be very strong and independent. But we deal with the opposite there. They get used to diving with beautiful warm water. They're just wearing bathing suits to go diving, and we try and get them to dive here, and it's like, it's too cold. So we're always fighting one spectrum or the other. Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those to test to. It's not that bad here. It's pretty nice. I think you guys were just on the pier, but you can see how cool all the different resources we have. And we can just go right on the pier and do some dives. So what we do though is we have, once people become an authorized diver, they can come in and just dive. Like I don't necessarily have to be here. I'm not handing them tanks. I'm not doing a lot of stuff for them. So they have a key to come in. This just happens to be where my office is. And they can grab scuba tanks, they can grab emergency equipment, they go off the pier, they can take a boat, so when they're doing training or their actual local work, they can conduct it here on their own. So it's kind of cool. It's like a dive shop and everything's free. They do have all their own equipment, and I'll talk about that in a second. But if you come in here, we have a whole lot of scuba tanks you can see. Kind of a variety of them. I'm not going to go into the specifics of them, but we have a variety because, again, we're trying to give people the tools that they can conduct their own work. Sometimes if you just have a quick dive or not a lot of work to do, you might just want a small tank because these are pretty heavy. These are about 30 pounds each, and so that's something you have to wear on your back and swim around with and go up and down stairs and or go through the beach. So sometimes we do have a little bit smaller tanks, so they're a little bit lighter. So again, but we also have people that go down deep and spend a lot of time, and so we have these bigger tanks that are even heavier. They're closer to 50 pounds, but they're nice so that we can give you the tool that you can get your work done. Do you guys know what the air is that we breathe right now? Oxygen. But that's actually a component. We breathe air, but there's oxygen we need to live. There's a whole lot of other stuff, but the two components we're looking at are oxygen and nitrogen. Yeah. And there is a lot of these other smaller gases in there. Luckily, they're in small amounts.
That's air, so air and nitrogen, oxygen.
Exactly. And we worry about other gases, carbon monoxide, like the exhaust from a car, that can be dangerous. And generally, most of these tanks, that's what we take. We just take the air that's in this room, compress it down, put it into a tank. And so, like for instance, this scuba tank right here, these are all the same size. These are holding 100 cubic feet of air. So it'd be kind of like a 10 foot by 10 foot room that we took all that air and squeezed it down into that tank. And so it gives you a lot of time underwater, but you still have a finite amount. You can only breathe so long. Yeah?
So if you go like super deep down into the ocean, like do you need some like pressure suits and like if you're like in the midnight zone and you say here's the midnight zone, do you need how big
Yeah, so that's a great question because that's where things get really complex and can get really, really dangerous. Yeah. Try and put one of those on your back. So in science, because we're most importantly focusing on safety, the deeper you go, the more dangerous it gets. So the reality is for science, most of the work is actually only 100 feet or less. So we're still in the photo zone. We still aren't going down very deep. In other parts of the world and other types of diving and like commercial diving, that's where they may go down hundreds and hundreds of feet, as you just mentioned, including the military, like the U.S. Navy. They have suits that you can go down 1,000 feet, but that's a whole different thing. They have different reasons for doing it. And a lot of times because when you go deep, the air won't last very long, and I don't want to get into the physics and all that. Exactly, the air gets compressed even more. So a lot of times they either have a hose that feeds it all the way down. So the commercial divers are the traditional hard hat with the hose going up to the surface. So they can stay an unlimited amount of time as long as that air keeps getting pumped down to them. And then some people actually use what we call rebreathers, where it actually recycles your air. Yeah, so those, we do use those in science occasionally. We're not really using them to go very deep, but we are using them to often extend how long we can stay underwater. And so those are cool because, like as we know, we breathe in air. When we exhale, do you know what we're exhaling?
CO2.
Yeah, carbon dioxide. And if we,
And oxygen.
yep, we're still exhaling. Yeah, so we breathe in 21% and we exhale about 16%. So that because our bodies consume some of that oxygen. And so we have still nitrogen, but yeah, it's that carbon, that CO2, carbon dioxide that's being exhaled. So you can imagine if I took a paper bag and just breathed in and breathed out, over time I'd pass out because I'm not replenishing the oxygen in there. What a rebreather does is you have a loop, we call it, that as you exhale, it goes through to your back, and there's a material that absorbs the carbon dioxide so it doesn't build up too much. And then we have a little bit of oxygen that will feed into it to replace that 7% we just breathed. And so that's why you can have, like, if I go diving off the pier and I take one of these tanks, I can stay maybe an hour. I'm down at 20 feet. That's cool. That's a lot of work I can get done. The rebreathers that we have, it has this bottle. It's almost the size of a Stanley thermos. That could allow me to stay for about 4 hours, and it's only about that big. Because all you're doing is just replacing the oxygen your body's consuming. Whereas on breathing,
efficient.
Exactly. Now it's a lot more complex. There's more, like any moving part you have, things can go wrong. So there's a lot of training that goes into it, and that's why we just don't give those to everyone, because there's a lot more hazards. And they really do work better when you're having to go deeper. But anyway, so great questions. But what I was getting at is we're breathing in 21%, but then we also have all that nitrogen. Have you guys heard of what's called the bends?
Yeah.
What do you know what that is?
Not really, but I've heard of it.
I'm sorry?
I'm not really, but I've heard of it.
Okay, yeah. What it is as we breathe in this gas under pressure, so we go underwater, our body consumes that oxygen. Our body does not consume the nitrogen, but it still gets into our bloodstream. And so when we go diving, we get small little bubbles throughout our blood, and that's okay. We breathe in and out, our lungs process it, and we exhale it. But what can happen is because we get so much nitrogen in our system, those bubbles, Natalie, I'm going to be probably about an hour. If you want to come back after 11. If we stay down too long, we get too many bubbles in our system, and these tiny, tiny little bubbles, when we surface, get a little bit bigger. It's like a balloon expanding. And if we have too much bubbles in our system, they call it bends because they can get caught in your joints. And usually people complain about it in their elbow or arm. That's why I keep pointing in. It hurts, but because you get this bubble, and it's like hard to move your elbow. So it just feels like you did a really bad workout or something. And that's a problem because that bubble, if it gets into my heart or even more importantly into my brain, that can cause some real problems. So a lot of the training we do is to make sure people dive safely so they don't get too many bubbles. And as I mentioned, we breathe 21% oxygen, the rest of it's mostly nitrogen. But what we also have here, and this is what we train all our divers to use, is what we call nitrox.
Oh, yeah.
What this does is it increases the amount of oxygen, lowers the amount of nitrogen, so it allows us to stay longer because we're not absorbing as much nitrogen. It has different hazards, like there's no free ride, so you benefit one place means you might have a problem somewhere else. So that's part of the training we do. And one of the hazards with this is that you actually can't go too deep. If you go too deep, that gas can become a little toxic and you can have other problems. I know nothing's perfect. But as I mentioned, science happens about 100 feet up to the surface, and that's where this gas is really good. It gets dangerous when you're down at 130 feet, 150 feet. So as long as our divers are diving safely, well within their training, this is actually a huge benefit. For Muhammad's work, I don't know if he's talked to you about it, he'll do long dives in the kelp forest, and he's only at like 60 feet, but sometimes he's there long enough that we do have concerns that he might get the bends or his dive buddy. And so he'll take the nitrox, which allows him to stay much longer and get more efficient. There's other ways we can work around it, but when you're out there doing many dives in a day, these are some things that, again, we're trying to give tools for our scientists to help them be safer, but also more efficient. So just a little more background for you guys. When you guys learn to dive, you'll appreciate this information.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's come on back this way a little bit.